Hey, everybody. Welcome to your podcast for April 25th, 2020.
Now, wait a minute. This was the podcast that was supposed to be the secret sponsor podcast. Do you want to tell them what happened?
Yeah, look, our fuck up is your gain, okay, as is the trend here on SDAO. We recorded the Future of Music podcast, so that's episode 8.
Which was was maybe my favorite podcast that we've ever recorded. I loved the conversation.
Yes, the conversation was good, and it would have been assisted with visual aspect, but
would have been.
But at least, as those of you that have listened to us for a while know, we've lost whole podcasts that just don't exist anymore.
And what happened with this one is we came here maybe an hour early, got the fucking cameras exactly what we wanted. They were beautiful.
Yeah.
Everything was going perfectly well. Sat down, recorded the podcast. Everything was great. We were playing to the cameras like this all over the place. I get up and I'm like, I don't see any red dot.
Yeah,
that should have been recording.
At the end of the podcast, yeah, you got up. But that's just, and so of course you grow from this shit. And so we just said just now, we're gonna make a checklist. Like, we're gonna make a checklist. We're gonna put it up on the fucking wall.
Yep.
And it's like, we will not start without. Because yeah, with a new sound card, with the laptop, with like getting rid of the lobster, with the cameras, with the lighting, with the like, it's a lot. It's a lot. And it's just us doing it. Are you loud over there?
I'm loud, but that's how I am
I
normally.
think you're amped up, man. I gotta see if you get
Talk to my wife. She knows about my loudness.
Yeah, because we're you can actually see in my camera angle, you can see the blinking here.
Oh, nice.
I'll cut that out maybe. But anyway, like we produce this show at the same time we fucking do it, which is wild. So basically, what happened is season 8 is now just season 3 episode 8 is just a straight up podcast. The podcast still exists. It's interesting. So if you're seeing this for whatever fucking reason, go watch our Future of Music or go listen to our Future of Music podcast, SDAO season 3 episode 8. And
that shit.
Mike's doing some producing work right now.
Again, we did not go through the checklist.
Yeah.
Somehow that camera got moved.
Yeah.
From the ideal position, and now, it wasn't in there when I checked it before. When we did the other one, that thing wasn't in there. God damn it, Jared!
Yeah.
What is happening to us?
Yeah, we're learning.
What's
we're learning.
happening to us,
Maybe this
Jared?
can move. I can get this out.
Jared,
okay.
what's happening to us?
No, so we're learning. We're learning. We're growing. So look. So now what this is our Origins of Music podcast, which usually would be for our secret sponsors only. But we decided, since we fucked up, we're going to give back. So we've decided to turn it into a video podcast. And so I'm sure the sponsors will understand. Sponsors, you can still download the podcast version of this easily as you normally do. But for everybody else, for our main audience, this is only viewable on YouTube. So you'll have to watch the video if you want access to the podcast.
Yeah, and it's going to give you a taste of what you would get if you did become a secret sponsor, which...
Yeah,
it's basically double the content
would be nice.
or more.
So if you found this video for whatever fucking reason, if this is the future, I don't know, listen to our Future Music podcast, then listen to the Origins. I think it's interesting to do it in reverse order because why the fuck not, eh? All right, so I think I said it all right.
God damn it, that was a
April
good
25th,
podcast.
2020. Yeah, but at least it's not gone. I mean, we have straight up lost. You remember? I think it was the drug episode season 2. Just we did it. And then we went back and it glitched and it was gone.
Yeah, we used to have glitchies all the time.
And we've moved on past the glitchies, but now we're moving on to the refinement stage of things, as music did.
No
in
more
its
glitchies,
origins.
but more bitchies. Woo!
But yeah, the thing is like I said it on the Future podcast, which is funny. I said you can have the technology, but you have to know how to use it. Otherwise, it's worthless. And we have these banging fucking cameras, and if you don't push record, they can't do shit, you know?
Man, or that's how you would say it to somebody. Oh, we recorded, we wanted to record this podcast, but the cameras glitched.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? What happened?
They didn't.
We didn't press record.
Yeah, but now I'm gonna always make sure that I see that red button. But fuck it, whatever, man.
But fuck it.
It is what it is. You learn from your mistakes. You move on. So today we're talking about the origins of music. When I was in music,
can I ask a question first?
Mike, you may ask a question whenever you feel like it.
What is with the people? There is okay.
All right.
There is a subsection of human that does this one particular thing, and I don't know if I have ever met or know anybody that does it.
Okay, what is that?
Who are all the people that are standing on a a highway overpass and just looking at the cars. Who the fuck are these people?
Yeah,
what is going on?
That might be a German thing. I don't know, but like maybe it happens in America, but in Germany, you drive under these overpasses and people just like they take a bike ride
there.
They stop and they just watch the cars go by.
Is it to get the fresh air wafting up from the fucking what is it?
Yeah.
Okay, but I thought I remembered it in America some, but I've definitely noticed it a lot in Germany where it's just a bunch of people. Now, if there are sometimes parents with kids, and I get that.
Right.
I get that. You got to entertain your kids any fucking way you can. If that just means like, oh, let's go to a weird overpass and entertain them, it's a new thing to do.
Sure.
So you do it.
Right.
But there are just normal people, sometimes single people, who are just there.
It's often a single old dude, you know?
What is going on?
They're often waving up there. Have you seen that before? They're often just up there just like spreading love, dude.
I once honked.
Fuck that, man.
I once honked and was told, oh, no, you can't do that. Why?
Yeah.
Because you're not allowed. Honking is specifically reserved for if you're communicating with other cars.
Germans,
they care about that shit.
They don't honk. They don't honk. I'm not going to name names, but I could. But there's many of you Germies out there I've ridden with.
Germies.
And you're not. I'm always like, that's what the horn's for. And they're like, no. Like, there was no danger.
They don't know the polite throat clear honk.
Yeah.
Honk.
Squip.
Squip.
They should have, some comedians said that. They should have like a light honk or something like that.
It's Larry David talking about the throat clear. I sometimes try to steal stuff. I don't mean to. It
slips out.
It slips out. Yeah.
But, you know, so we're talking about the origins of music today. An interesting topic since, you know, everybody fucking likes music. Where did it come from? Also, you know, the Future podcast had a lot of interesting things because we're making this podcast, of course, during the COVID-19 quarantine times, and which is ending in Germany but still going on in America.
Well, kind of ending.
Yeah, they're slowly starting to open up some things out here.
Yeah.
But something we talked about on our quarantine podcast, I think, is we talked about the fact that art is something that human beings just like fucking need and crave. And you can tell that for how fucking long it's been around.
Yeah.
You know, how long around, like music and art has been around for basically as long as we know about people.
It's arguable which came first, music or language. They don't quite know, but they know that music, they have evidence for music as far... They have flutes. The first flute, what's it called? I wrote it down here. The Divja Baba flute.
Well, that's arguably the first flute, right?
Right. No, that's the first flute found, which means it's not the first flute that existed. And it could be far off, but that was already 43,000
Well, that's the oldest instrument they've ever found, that one. And it's debatable because it's such a small piece. So we're getting into prehistoric flutes here, or Paleolithic flutes, I should say.
Yeah.
Which is also prehistory. That's what prehistoric means. Yeah. But these Paleolithic flutes, which is a fucking awesome topic. But this flute Mike's talking about has like 2 little holes in the bone, but they have some like fucking proper 5-hole fucking flutes.
Yeah. Well, those came much later though. So the first, from what I understand, the first flute that could play like a melody, like you could play a succession of notes, is 7,000 years. That they know of.
Right.
A Chinese flute, which, of course, it was the Chinese because the Chinese are basically first in fucking everything.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big landmass. A lot of it just has to do with where people were and shit.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to get in, and we'll get into it more here in a second. But like in music history, they brush over, at least in my school, we brushed over medieval music really quickly. You know, around the year like 400 up to like 1400, this kind of medieval time, we move through quickly, and then it's like Renaissance, Baroque. We start to slow down as each era comes.
Really, you move through it quickly?
Not quickly, but it's like okay. So I learned about it in school, but how much are you talking about medieval music now? Like, how much of a part of your life is it now?
No, okay, that's true.
Baroque music
maybe the first part, like at least the first half of my first year of school was medieval music.
I mean, so whatever that. Medieval.
Fuck you.
I mean that's early music.
You.
That's early music. That's medieval music and Renaissance music is when people talk about early music. That's what they mean. But before that, we of course had ancient music, which is like when we talk about ancient Greece, so like the year 50 and shit. And then before that, then we get into like prehistoric music, which is the true origins of music. But for us as musicians, usually what was going on in the medieval period is where we start things, because that's when we had neumes and we had more information about music.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the big thing. I mean, there's not it's so difficult to say anything because almost none of it has any documentation at all. A lot of what we know about Greek and Roman music comes from depictions of musicians.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you find texts, and if something was written down in a primitive form of writing music, it was this one sort of Greek writing that they used, Greek notation. But seriously, so at the beginning of the Grout Poliska book, that's a tiny, tiny bit because they know so little.
That's the whole thing about it.
And the interesting part to me, the really interesting, because you could call that origins of music, but that's not the fucking origins of music. They were playing music for thousands of years before that.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is where the fuck did it come from?
Yeah. Like for humans, you mean?
For humans.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy because like Mike had brought up language, and it's like what came first, music or language? The hard thing about language is, of course, people were speaking before they were writing. That's pretty obvious. And you can go back and listen to our Is Music a Language episode if you kind of want to hear more about that. But until there was written stuff, and a lot of written stuff, it's like we really couldn't tell which language was which or like who was speaking and where, because of course if it wasn't written down, there was no way to really know, you know? And music was the same way. The difference with music though is like instruments, of course, existed, like these like Paleolithic flutes and shit. Yeah. But also then you can make some guesses like, okay, if people were banging rocks with a hammer, you know what I mean? Like that's rhythm right there. That's pitch. So then like people get into these like singing rocks and shit that people were probably doing. So a lot of it is people logically filling in the gaps. But also in the beginning, the origins of language and music really weren't different, you know?
Well, no, that's not necessarily true. It's questionable if the origin of language came more from gesture, or from vocalizations. They don't necessarily. I know it sounds weird, but language is not just vocalization; it is also communication, right?
Right.
So the origin of communication is basically the origin of language, also.
Yeah.
So if you have people communicating more with their hands than anything, then it might result in a language that was just not vocalized.
Yeah, sure.
So origin of language is a tricky thing.
Yeah.
But the origin of spoken language is, there are lots of theories that say that that singing might have been, a form of singing might have been the first invention over top of vocalization, as in language vocalization.
Yeah, sure.
Because you hear it in nature all the time. You hear birds in nature all the time singing tones, And when you yell, for instance, sort of primitive reactions to situations, they're more. It's more. You could argue that it's more like singing, sustained things or expressive sounds is more like singing than just speaking is. So it's almost an unanswerable question, I would say.
Yeah, of course. And you fill in the gaps with all that shit. But it's like, with your example of like animals and stuff, it's interesting because you get into something in evolution called like this whole like signaling theory thing. Yeah. Where it's like basically when birds like have a bird call, that means there's danger. You know, there's honest signaling it's called, which means like when the bird does that, it means there's danger. And then there's cheating, which is where they do something similar, but then they do it to like steal something, like they lie. So you have the invention of like lying and shit, birds lie and shit. And it's like you would have to tune your ear before you could even talk, because the first hyoid bone, which you would need to kind of like make singing sounds and stuff, was discovered in a skeleton 60,000 years before, like 60,000 years ago, basically, right? And so that was the earliest point they found like the actual
hyoid bone, yeah,
the actually what you need to be making singing sounds. So it's like before that point, it's like people probably couldn't really make the sounds needed to be able to sustain pitch in a way that could be singing or even communicating, you know. But just from a listening perspective, to be listening to the birds and stuff, like you said, this is already the starting of music, because you're having to like differentiate pitches or pitch direction and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, which is really hard. But like dogs can do that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, okay. So that brings up another thing, and that is the idea of pattern recognition. Fucking humans have the huge tendency to recognize patterns. You sometimes do it when there's not even a pattern there. For instance, the apophenia, I think it is.
Okay.
Apophenia, I think, is the tendency for instance, when you see a face, if you see like two knobs and on a
where you recognize faces.
You recognize faces where there are no faces.
Okay.
That is the tendency of humans to recognize patterns.
Yeah, sure.
And that is that comes from just an evolutionary advantage that that humans have over other animals. We have a very good ability to recognize patterns in things, and it sometimes overshoots. And then you try to recognize patterns in things that don't exist. That's apophenia.
I think Go
ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's funny because in our Future of Music episode, we talked about how people have difficulty predicting the future of things without like using what we have now.
Right.
But I think when we go in the past, where there's no more information, I think people often do the same thing. Like they imagine singing and talking and communicating with what we would do now. You know,
right?
And so then they put those on there because, like, with these Paleolithic flutes we were talking about earlier, it's like the most famous one has like these 5 holes, and they're like, oh, that looks like a flute,
right?
But it's like actually in these caves, even nowadays, you'll find hyena bite marks that align 5 holes in like a bone, and it looks almost the exact same.
Yeah.
So it's like, did someone look at that and be like, that's a flute? You know,
what
like,
have there been examples that are how do you say, not misdiagnosed, but misidentified as early flutes that were these hyena bites or something?
Well, that's why it's debatable. That you brought up I think it's like the Divye Baba baby something flute. Like the oldest one ever found is like 2 holes of this broken bone.
Yeah,
and it's like a couple inches long. There's 2 holes in like this hollow bone. It's like that could have been a flute, but it also could have been like just a bite from an animal.
Yeah,
you know?
It could have been. One of the big archaeological reasons why they think it was a flute is that it's been found more than once, and where it's found is important, and it's normally in ritualistic burials of people, which means that also that's the other interesting thing is that music, from its earliest stages, must have had some sort of spiritual, you could say,
sure,
or special purpose. It was held in high regard even among the earliest humans.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, there's still there's lots of cultures that really can't separate certain aspects of life with music. Like we talked about this in one of our episodes. I think Is Music a Language? We talked about this, but like some people, they like don't view it as music because they're using it to coordinate work. Some people can't separate dance and music, you know, in certain cultures. So it's like, I'm sure the religious stuff of this came from that, you know?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, music makes you feel certain ways. Like, talk to anybody who's broken up recently, and they're listening to music, and it's making them feel more fucking depressed than they ever. I mean, you're understanding songs in a new way when you do that, but that's because it's somehow able to make you feel a certain way. I can understand why people would think that's magical.
Yeah, sure, of course. And one of the most inarguable like flutes they found was in this place. It was Hula Fels. So in English, I guess that's like you would say Hula Fell or whatever. It's a cave in Germany, right? That's where they found it. And in this cave, they found the Hula Fell flute, right? Which is like made of a giraffe bone, 5 holes. It's like 35,000 years old. One of the oldest, like inarguable, is like, yeah, that's probably a fucking flute. In the cave, they also found the oldest examples of cave art. You know what I mean? Then they also found the oldest example of someone like shaping or forming like a human figure, and it's the Venus of Holofell. So it's like someone made.
What? Where is this in Germany? Do you know?
Yeah, it's in the east, I think. It's out near it's near Dresden or something like that. It's
I
want to
go.
You can still go.
That's incredible.
But in this cave, they found like it's basically like a little sculpture, and it's a woman. It's obviously a woman. Someone carved a woman as sculpture. So like this cave was like a fucking museum or
Even
someone's
back
home. You know,
then
it's
they
like
were trying to.
It's like
That's the earliest example of porn ever.
Yeah, oh my god!
Like, look at those clay boobies.
But you have this little woman, you have this flute, and you have art all found in the same place. And so of course it's more likely then that it wasn't some random hyena bone. You know what I mean? Because like people were like living there, and you found this other shit.
No, look.
The place this stuff was found.
I don't want people to think I'm.
Yeah, okay.
Just making light of it with the porn comment, but it is interesting to me that when people could make art, when they could do something like that, they were revering the woman body.
Well, I mean,
like as soon as they could.
Yeah, I mean,
make something into a pair of boobies. Or...
Yeah, and I can't remember what the art they found was, but back then, I mean, it was like primal needs. You know, it was like mating and eating. Like what else are you gonna draw? Like a sunset? Like they don't give a shit about that. It's like they want to live, they want to eat, and they want to fuck. That's what people were doing back then.
Live, eat, fuck.
And so of course that's what people would make art about. And art these days is not that different, you know?
It's not totally different, no.
No. I mean, look at like the most popular Instagram accounts. What are they about? You know?
Absolutely, dude.
This type of shit.
Absolutely.
But in this prehistoric time, it's like also they have this. It's called like CDS, which stood for child something. It was like child, I think I wrote child-directed speech. Yeah, that's right. Child-directed speech is basically mothers talking to their children. And infants, it's been proven psychologically that infants respond better to like singing sounds. You know what I mean? So you would find out just, because like getting a response from your baby, you would find out pretty organically that if you're like, hey, what are you doing? Like you're going to get more of a response than like, hey, baby. Right?
Hey,
and so these might have been some of the first like kind of more melodic uses of the voice.
Interesting.
You know, this stuff. So all this stuff's happening at the same time. The birds are fucking chirping, like mamas are like, oh, it's okay, baby. It's like it's only a matter of time till you're like, hey, let's make some music. Like, you know.
It's funny
until
though.
It becomes music.
It's funny though because I was gonna say our language isn't the most musical. There are certainly languages
English, yeah.
that require more.
There's melodic languages where the direction of the voice changes
Exactly,
the meaning.
but we have that also.
Yeah.
We have that also.
I mean, not with the meaning. Not with the meaning of.
Are you really going there?
Yeah, but that doesn't change the meaning of the word.
It changes the meaning of the sentence. What
it changes.
I want to say.
It changes the color.
Are you really going there?
But
are you really going there?
Yes.
Same things.
Mm.
Different timbre. Different pitch,
yeah.
Different direction of the
well,
pitch.
that has a name in linguistics. I can't remember it, but like semantics is like arguments over the meaning of a word.
Right.
But then there's some other thing. It starts with a P, and that's in a language. Then also context alone changes the meaning of a word.
I love when we say stuff like that. Like, I don't know what it's called.
No, you can look it up, but it's like
Go fucking look it
people
up
talk
yourself.
about semantics, but semantics are like a word itself. But then also it's like that's what's hard about learning another language is like. Often context alone, not even inflection of your words, but context alone. So like if I say like I live in a bad state, with no context you probably mean like the state of California.
Right.
But if I say my house is in a bad state, it's like well then does that mean condition now? So sometimes it's just the context.
Right.
But you could also say my house is in a bad state, and you could mean the state of California. You know, it's like from context then meaning also changes. So there's
also my house is in a bad state.
Yeah.
My house is in a bad state.
Right. So there's names for all these in linguistics, and I don't have them, but it's like the semantics of the word, the culture, the inflection of your voice, but also the context of what's happening around it. It all changes the meaning, and people forget that like that's what makes learning a language so hard. That's the wall you hit in learning a language. It's not that table is Tisch in German, but it's like the fact that like where it comes based on contextually around it, just like state was my random example.
You could like it when you first learn a language, you learn the sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could say like I said the sentence.
Yeah.
I said what I learned was that meaning of that sentence, and you don't recognize that the way you said it made you sound like a fucking dick.
Yeah, but I would imagine back then, instead of a larger vocabulary, languages probably had a tendency. This is just my opinion. This is like totally not. But I would just guess
that's what people are tuning in for. They're not tuning in for our academic.
But I would guess that like it's like there would be fewer words and more inflection based. You know,
that makes sense.
That would make sense, you know. And we talked about this all in our language of music, is music a language thing? But it's like, why would you have all these words if you have like different cultures that are spread out and need to communicate, and there's like fewer people and fewer things and shit? It's like instead of all these verbs like, you know, give and take and receive and whatever, like it would just be like. It'd be like table.
There are universals. Table. I was gonna say. I was gonna say that exact thing. Like there are universals. When I do this, look at me.
There you go.
I'm furrowing my brow. When I do that, I'm never really happy. If I'm doing that, right? And if you say ooga booga, you say ooga fucking booga, motherfucker, right?
Yeah, loud sounds are often like aggressive, or they are. linked to like danger. You know, that's what birds are doing and shit. And soft sounds are like more sensuous or whatever.
Yeah.
And so this obviously could lead to the origins of music quite simply, quite organically. And there's actually a field of study that's interesting called archaeoacoustics. Have you heard of that?
No, that sounds fucking awesome.
It's people.
Gets me hard as a rock.
It's people that are like half archaeologists, half they study sound, and they basically go back and they study like the sounds of old ritualistic places, the sounds of old rocks,
the
and
caves
shit.
and shit like that.
Yeah, that's and like you think being an opera singer is hard, but there's someone out there trying to make it as an
Or if you-
acoustic, like whatever the fuck, you know.
When's the last time you saw an advertisement for a job that was looking for an archaeoacoustician? Right?
I think you kind of have to make that job, or
You
you're
have
linked
to
some
make it and make
university.
the demand.
Yeah,
Jesus, and you thought you were a nerd.
yeah.
No. Listen to this. Tunk,
But you know what's interesting
Tink.
is
tunk, tink. Just hitting these
that's your whole
fucking
job.
rocks.
What's interesting is in reading about this, I was like looking at these old instruments, so like these like Paleolithic flutes and stuff, and I found one called the bowl roarer. You ever heard of that? I picked it. There's all these prehistoric instruments. You can go take your pick. But I thought the bull roarer, first what caught my attention is, of course, the name.
Bull roar?
Roarer.
Roarer.
Roar. To roar, bull roarer,
That's
right?
a hard one to say.
And so I saw it, bull roarer.
Bull roar. It's even more difficult with the Pittsburgh accent. Bull roar.
Bull roar.
Bull roar. You got that freaking bull roar over here. I love that song with the bull roar.
When I lived in South Carolina, they eat boiled peanuts out there. Have you ever
That's
had?
fucking gross.
You ever had boiled peanuts?
is wrong with
They
South-
boil peanuts with the shell and then like have seasoning. Then you eat the whole thing. And I remember someone was like, "Do you want a bowl peanuts?" And they said bowl and boiled the same. And I was like, "A bowl?" And they're like, "Yeah." I was it's like, "What?" Bowl.
If you get your bowl roar and get a bowl there.
This is a bowl roarer. And anyway, I got a video here. I'm gonna show you, Mike.
All right.
And anyway, what was interesting is I clicked on it because it was called Bull Roarer, and then the first thing I saw that it was used in these Dio, I can't remember the guy. Bacchus.
How old is it?
Oh, this is like I think 16,000 BC. It's fucking old as shit, dude.
A bowl roar is 16,000 BC.
Yeah. 18,000 BC. But they used it in these L'Orfeo podcast. We talked about this religion or ortheism, I think it was called.
Okay, yeah.
And we had talked about these like Bacchus mystery things,
Right.
which had the Roman name, which was Dionysus, I think, Dionysus mysteries or whatever they're called.
Dionysian mysteries.
Yeah. And so the bull roarer was used at those. Right?
Fuck.
And so it's all coming together. So I found some dude on YouTube who fucking has
course.
one, and he's just like,
Of course.
and it's not
He's friends with the rock acoustician.
and it's not a nice sound what he's doing, but it's you could tell that it would fucking carry a long ways.
All right, play it.
All right, so I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna do the same thing we did on the podcast that will never be seen. And I'm gonna put it over here. Hold on, I gotta cue it up because he talks about it for a while here, but I think about 30 seconds in the party starts. So here you go. So you got this guy. I like how he dressed the part though.
course
And he's
he
in the
does.
house. So it's this like piece of wood that's on the string, and here he goes.
Oh, yeah, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
It's like,
I like how he dresses
so you
the
know
part.
how like the
Yeah, but
you want to impress a girl, you go out on your Harley Davidson, you go outside of her house and go, "Rum, rum."
Yeah.
This is what they were doing in prehistoric times.
No, that was
you go
that was
outside their house. Like,
no in prehistoric times. That was the guy with the acoustic guitar at the house party. You know, yeah. Like you're talking to some girl and you're like booga booga, and like you're making progress, right? And then like this guy comes up with his bull roarer, and she's like, "I'll be right back." You know, you're like, "Fuck, man."
He got me. He got
The
me.
bull roarer, dude.
You know what?
But that's what these archaeoacoustic people are like studying. Is this type
Speaking
of shit?
of old ass fucking instruments,
Yeah.
if you want to find anything that's well preserved, have you ever seen the bog bodies before?
Bog bodies?
Have you ever seen any of these guys?
I got no idea what bog bodies are.
Oh my god! So
about
up in Denmark,
Okay.
and up in Germany also they have these fields of peat.
Okay.
Right? And they were bogs, and if a person
Yeah.
fell in, or oftentimes was thrown into these bogs,
Okay. Fuck.
back in ancient times,
Yeah.
you're preserved perfectly.
That's fucking gross. That's like
Look
Everest
at
or whatever.
look up bog bodies.
Bog bodies. That's a good name for a band, though.
Wait. I'm gonna look it up right now, and then you can put it on the video. I want to show you the. I'll send it to you.
There's a band called Bog Bodies out there. I guarantee it. If not, you can have that.
Seriously, if not, we should fucking make it. The Bog Bodies.
Bog Bodies, man.
Bog Body.
We're the Bog Bodies, and we're gonna fucking rock your night.
Bog Bodies. Okay, hold on.
Bog Bodies has to be a song, at least a bluegrass song. Bog Bodies.
Look at this guy.
Okay.
Ready?
Oh God. Yikes! And how old is that?
6,000 years old.
Okay.
6,000 years old, dude. It's so.
Here, I'll put the image up
crazy.
there. We can react to it.
Yeah, or this one.
Yikes! Okay.
Yowza! The fucking bodies
Okay.
are crazy as shit because they're thousands of years old, and the skin is still Tullen Man is the name of the guy.
Okay.
Or,
how old are
where
they?
they found it. Some lived thousands of years ago, 2,300 years old or something like that.
Okay.
Right? The guy was strangled,
Yeah.
like fucking killed and thrown in there, and like his clothes and stuff were preserved also.
Okay.
I bring this up because
Yeah.
in these bogs up in Denmark, right, which is where the majority of them are, where you find all this shit. That's where this guy was found, this
Right.
Tolland body or Tolland man.
Yeah.
They found these instruments, a set of 6 instruments
In the bog.
in the bog, perfectly preserved. So much so, 6,000 years old.
Yeah.
So much so you can play them today.
Fucking Bog Bodies, man. Someone out there make a band
it's
called Bog Bodies.
So it's called a lure,
Yeah.
L-U-R, right?
Okay.
And these instruments, it kind of looks like a sousaphone.
Okay.
It like sort of wraps around you.
Yeah.
So look in the video here. It like they've got like a fucking mouthpiece there.
Right.
It goes around and then up like a huge fucking speaker. Look, I'm getting down here so you can see it.
There you
It's
go.
like this. There's the horn right there.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can still fucking play them today.
That's what's nuts. Well, you can hear what they sound like.
You can hear what they sound like.
I bet some acousticians. What would you call that?
I don't. We haven't decided yet.
I bet they're going. I bet they go bananas over that shit. You know what I mean?
Just got that bottle of lotion and the Kleenexes out when we mentioned the lures.
Yeah, man.
So I've got to get back to something though.
I keep getting my hands in your shot here, man.
I know.
I
Get your
can't.
hands
I
out of
try
my
not to,
fucking
but I'm
shot.
sorry. It's just I like to get up on the table. We might have to. Give
So listen
the
to
camera
this.
a turn in the
Listen.
future.
We talked about when we talked about like magic, like how people were associating music with like magical things.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Let's talk about something. I wanted to talk about something that is old, that was codified a long time ago, but not as long as like the 43,000 when we're talking about music actually happened, being invented. But this thing is actually somehow magical to me.
Okay.
That fucking music
Yeah.
is just a matter of ratios.
Okay.
The fact that it is an inherent thing is somehow lends itself to being magical.
Okay.
To people thinking of it this way. For instance, like we all think an octave is consonant. We all think a fifth is consonant. We all think a fourth is consonant. Wherever
Yeah.
you fucking go.
Okay.
And it's based on fucking physics. And the
Yeah.
fact that Pythagoras, I'm bringing up Pythagoras.
Okay,
That's
okay.
where I'm fucking getting.
I mean, you gotta
to.
get the us's at some point in this.
Yeah, you gotta get there sometime. I mean, if we could carry on the conversation for the whole podcast on just like prehistoric music, that'd be awesome. The problem is it's gone forever. The moment you make a note and you puff it out into the fucking ether, then it's gone.
Sure.
But if you make a cave painting, it's there.
Yeah,
it can
sure.
exist for 10,000 years. That's great, you know?
Yeah.
But all of their music, except for some of their instruments. Wow.
That's a good
What
word.
What the fuck is going
Keep
on?
it going. Keep going.
So we don't necessarily know.
Mhm.
We don't necessarily know what their old music sounded like.
Right.
But what we can know is that it most likely was based on the natural physics of sound and the consonants
Yeah.
that we understand.
Okay.
That's the one thing that's interesting to me, and that's and that all of that is basically mathematical. Like it's able to be described mathematically,
Right.
in a series of ratios.
Yeah. Sure. I mean,
Is interesting.
yeah. Music is inherently mathematical as physics is.
Right.
You know.
Exactly.
There's like we talked about it once on one of the podcasts. I can't remember now, but this like these things you keep finding in different areas of physics have nothing to do with each other. There's just these patterns and things that
Yeah.
exist. You know.
But the fact that the fact that physics and the physics of sound was happening to these people even though they didn't fucking know it.
Yeah, sure.
You're existing in this world without it knowing. So whenever you can all together.
Yeah.
So something that might or often does instill a religious feeling in somebody is a shared experience between at least two people, but more likely a group of people.
Right.
Because other than that, you are conscious inside your own head, and you can never be sure, especially when there's maybe no language.
Yeah.
You can never actually be sure that everybody is experiencing the same existence that you're experiencing.
Sure.
But if you can have a reaction to a fifth, or to a or some sort of melody, or to a sound,
sure,
that is immediately a binding experience that everybody has.
And well, that's what they say is a lot of these people tend to say that it's very likely that at the beginning music was used to kind of bring social stuff to people together. It was used to identify groups you belong to and stuff like that. It's like music and language were probably very, very close because language is also used for those things, and you could probably develop musical sounds. High rock, low rock is probably more obvious in the beginning than like vowel sounds. You know what I mean?
What we do know, what is clear, is that we were able to produce pitches before we were able to produce spoken language.
Sure.
Which means that
vocally, you mean?
Yeah, vocally.
Yeah.
And possibly even externally with flutes or something.
Sure.
If we're able to do that,
yeah,
that means that the first sort of shared, outside of maybe hand gestures and like the expression of your face, the first shared acoustic shared experience is most likely a musical one.
Yeah.
Or most likely having to do with tones, which is then having to do with the fact that the physics of sound is the same for everybody.
It's fucking hard, man, because like Mike and I have been jamming right now for a while about the prehistoric music period, and it's so much as speculation. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And a lot of it makes sense, and it's like then you quickly get into this like what is music and like when does it become language, which we did a whole podcast about that, of course. But it's like it's interesting because it's like when are you going to define? It's like when does it become communicating and not music? Which I don't want to have a conversation right now.
Yeah, but wait, some of it is speculation, some of it is not speculation. The physics of sound is not speculation.
Yeah, but how people were using sound is in
but we
music.
know that they were. What you can assume rather well is that they were using sound before they were using language.
Yes. But I mean, it could have been clapping hands. And is that communicating then, or is that music?
No, but if we're using voices now, and pitch now in our language, we can assume that they had to use pitch. It's not like they all of a sudden started using pitch and sound in their voices in some sort of formed language. It had to evolve in some way, which means that they had to start using pitch before they started using language. Language is, of course, a man-made thing. Pitch is not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, our brain pitch is just sound waves, and our brain interprets it.
In the beginning, they probably weren't like harmonies. Okay, harmonies. Yeah, you're talking about octaves and fifths, but I don't think they were harmonizing back then. Which means I doubt that they were landing on any sort of like something that we would call a scale these days. It was probably more like whoop, boop. Like those notes might have nothing to do with each other. But I have no reason to think that people would be singing major scales back then.
No,
or
not,
modes
not
or
major
anything.
scales, not major scales, but the likelihood that they come across some sort of strong relation between 1 and 5 is very strong. It's very strong. Every bit of music that we know, no matter how primitive the music is basically centered around 1 and 5.
But not at the same time. I feel like
not at the same time. That's not what I mean, though.
Yeah.
But it's not an accident that the scale degree 1 and 5 are important to basically every set of music.
I see what you mean.
Which means that has to be related to the physics of the sound.
Okay, I see. Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And the prehistoric musical period is a very interesting thing to talk about because it's a lot of speculation. It's a lot about like what is music. It's also what they had back then, like how the world and landscape was changing. But the reason we start talking about like ancient music and medieval music first is because when you had the rise of society then, then literacy became important. That's how you separated classes. And when literacy became important, then you started having monks writing things down. That's when we started to get a lot of documentation about like music, what music was, this type of stuff. Yeah. Also, people wanting to have a system for remembering music instead of just doing it, And then that's why a lot of the times in musical classes, the prehistoric music stuff is skimmed over because it's like you said, it's usually a page in the book. It's like some old fucking flutes. We don't know. You could speculate and you could have a conversation like we're having. But when, and like I think we talked about one of the podcasts. Didn't we talk about Boethus? Mm-hmm. Was that his name? Mm-hmm. That sounds weird. Boethus.
No, that's right. That's it.
And he had these 3 types of music he wrote about, right? And he wrote about like the music of the worlds, which was not music that you could literally hear. It was like it was meant to be understood but not actually physically heard, right? Then he had like music of humans, which is obviously then like your body's music, so maybe your heartbeat, but also probably actual musical things, and then instrumental music. And he codified music in these 3 things in this ancient music
period. So basically,
period.
He was using music to somehow explain the natural world. Yeah, well, like he was explaining your heartbeat with music.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which direction it went. He was more of just trying to categorize the music that existed. Like he was trying to kind of categorize more of what music was.
Right, but what I'm saying is he was bringing into the conversation things that aren't necessarily music.
Yeah, sure. So it's that you already see that, and this is the problem with also linguists too. It's like the way they were using the word back then doesn't necessarily match the way we use the word now. Because he said music of the world isn't meant to be heard, and most people agree, except John Cage, that music is like probably usually meant to be heard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what John Cage was doing with his whole thing, right?
Yeah.
It was Cage, right? That did 4 minutes 22.
4 minutes 33.
Is it 33?
I think it's
33.
33.
I only listened to half of it. I didn't. I couldn't get through the whole thing.
That's really good. That's really good. That's really good. You're a funny man. You're a funny fucker.
I'd already heard how it ended, so I didn't, It's been spoiled for me. So then, like, of course, you have prehistoric music, you have ancient music. Ancient music's a big deal because we start to have like kind of like you said, like this Greeks had like a version of like kind of writing music,
right?
But it's really confusing, and people have to kind of piece together exactly what that meant. You know what I mean? And it's not like the neumes we're used to that came around like in the 9th century and stuff, where it's like those were used more as a mnemonic device, notes to remember how something went, but not necessarily a tool to convey exactly how something went.
Right.
It's like you already kind of knew it, and it's like when you jot down notes for like a test or something like that. It's like you know it, you just need a clue to kind of help you get it. And that type of stuff. But those neumes and stuff, that's why those then become important, because then we start to actually be able to kind of guess what this stuff sounded like more specifically.
Absolutely. And even then, it's funny that we don't. You can go back and you can say, all right, yeah, we have Mozart scores. Let's even go back to Mozart.
Okay.
But it then takes more scholarship to find out what an A was.
Yeah.
To find out at what frequency A was ringing. Now,
back then, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Now we can say
A440.
We have the ability to say this is an A. Mm-hmm. This is its exact frequency, and this is the way we are tuning our scale, so you can reproduce the music exactly. But that took a long time to be able to get to that. To be able to get to that system.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is also that there were many systems, like neumes originated, they're Aramaic, I think. They're an Arabic thing, you know. We talk about like their usage in Europe and stuff like that, but like the first examples of stuff go back a little further than that. It's just when stuff goes back that far, it's like you have to fill in the gaps, and once you fill in too many gaps, it's like you can't really say how this stuff was being used.
Personal opinion time. I gotta say.
All right.
I gotta say, I don't see any other way that singing got created other than just some guy. There's a guy way far away.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey! Wait a minute. That... Hey! just fucking started doing something. And he's like, this sounds okay. We can do this.
No, it's an interesting thing you bring up because maybe maybe the necessity to carry distance over for the sound to carry is going to shape how the sound sounds. And it's only going to be, and so it's the same with music now. It's like you got people like we talked about in our Future of Music podcast.
Why did I pick such a high tone? I was afraid because we've been drinking a little bit now. I was afraid. Damn it. Am I there already?
I mean, yeah. Yeah, you said on one of the podcasts, man, that we haven't been using our voice in weeks. But like, yeah, but it's like you would be crafting the sound not for a creative reason, but you would be crafting the sound for the purpose of a carrying, and so carrying over distance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so of course someone's going to come along and be like, "Hey, we could also craft sounds for an event, you know, to say like to communicate a bit more." And so then people are going to eventually start crafting sounds for beauty and communication and art and music and entertainment and this type of stuff. It's a very natural part of human life is music.
If I were
It's always been there, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And I was just going to say, if I had to pick another contender,
Yeah.
your example would be it.
Yeah.
Hush, little baby, don't say
Yeah, 'cause you're like-
that sort of thing.
Because it's very natural to to get a reaction from a baby. It's crying, and he's
Yeah.
like, hey, 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 and it stops crying. The next time you're gonna go directly to that, and you gotta realize that like, ooh, ooh, like, and then just slowly just gonna find. It's like it's very natural. But then the other interesting aspect of that is like what makes the melody then soothing to a baby versus something monotone. You know?
Yeah, and I gotta say, it just again, it's personal opinion time, but I like the sound of whenever somebody goes, ooh, ooh, you know, something light and nice and sort of quasi melodic.
Yeah.
There is also, as an adult,
Yeah.
also something appealing about that, the same way it's appealing to a child. So
Yeah.
that means, or I would postulate then,
Okay.
that the mother then, after recognizing, because again, humans are pattern recognizing animals.
Sure.
After recognizing, that worked last time.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that again.
Yeah.
If she's doing it again and she feels and she likes it, that possibly means that she is going to come say, okay, not only do I like it, but I like doing it like this.
Yeah.
Which means that there are certain patterns that would evolve in her particular singing.
Yeah.
Which might even lead to some sort of identification
Yeah.
of an individual based on what sort of pattern they're doing, which who knows, maybe that's like the origin of names or something.
Yeah, I'm sure different melodies work for different things, but then also she might want to share it with a friend of hers. You know, and so then you start having the passing of these melodies. So you could totally see how this stuff can organically happen. But the thing also that I wish someone would have communicated to me when I was in music school is that, like, you know, the medieval period being like whatever it is, 400 to 1400 or something, like these borders are pretty arbitrary, you know.
Yeah, totally.
Stuff bled into each other, and certain cultures and areas of the world were ahead faster than other ones, you know what I mean? But a definitive mark of like when it's like really worthwhile to start talking about music, as interesting as it is to talk about prehistoric music, is when we had some sort of consistent notation with music and people writing about music.
That's when you
people
can start
writing about music.
That's
you know?
when you can start talking about it concretely. But I gotta say, the fact that we know so little about it is the very thing that gets me maybe even more interested in it.
But what's funny is the questions you try to answer back then, a lot of those questions, funnily, my English is getting fucking shit,
I know,
dude.
It's terrible.
Funny enough, man, those, no adverbs today. Funny enough, man, those questions still exist today. You know, like we had the whole podcast about is music a language? You know, it's like we had our opinions and stuff like that, but it's like a lot of these things are arguable now. And if they're arguable now, how the fuck are you going to argue about it 60,000 years ago?
True.
You know, when you have nothing to do with it.
No, it's true.
So I don't know, man.
That's my little personal theory, though.
Yeah.
What if the names at one point? See, this is if I were a really creative person, I'd create like a screenplay or something based around this.
Yeah.
That the names of people evolved from the songs that the mother ended up singing to that child.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't name the child right away, but she started getting the child calm with a certain song and tailored the song to what would make the child calm.
Yeah.
And then ended up making a small name, like it being the beginning of what names actually are, like a tiny musical signature that would be the person's name.
Well, language.
Wouldn't that be cool to have a
it's
culture
funny.
like that?
Yeah,
You have
yeah.
a musical name.
Well, it's funny. I mean, we didn't get into it on the language is music a language podcast, but like it's funny. Like in our own language, we have things that still exist that we don't remember. You know what I mean? So like the ing ending in English, for instance, means of the. So redding means of the red. So of the red person probably. So this is like a Viking thing. So like some red bearded Viking came and like took over town, and then it was like of the red person. So it was redding ing of the right. So we say redding, and we don't think of like what that means, but it's like we're still using something that came from something,
right.
But we don't remember the function of where it originally came from. And of course, in music, these things,
vestigial. I think it's called vestigial language or something like that.
Yeah,
vestigial something, meaning it's like if people have a vestigial tail, it's this tiny bit of their tailbone that is genetically still there from a time when you actually might have had a tail, right?
And I think we talked about it on the Monteverdi podcast or something, but you had brought up that, of course, like William the Conqueror went to England, and then French was then was a language of
Noble.
the noble language of the courts and stuff.
Yeah.
So that means governments. If you wanted to work with the government, if you wanted to do anything with government, you needed to speak French.
Yeah.
And then English was just a common language. And so that's all done. Like I think the Norman invasion or some shit happened, and then it's like in today's English, still to this day, the French word will always sound more formal.
That's right.
It exists from that. I can't remember the examples we used. We used like respond instead of answer. We used commence instead of begin. It's like these.
Those are really good. Those are really good. The other one, which is my favorite example, is the fact that English has two separate words for the animal and the meat that the animal produces.
Like beef.
The meat, the meat, which is, so you imagine that you have people of nobility who are speaking French being served the end product, right? Which means venison, beef, poultry.
Yeah.
All of these things are what the people who are receiving the meal are calling it from the French.
Yeah.
But all the people who are actually dealing with the animals, those all have English derivations instead of French derivations.
The animals, the
animals.
Yeah, because they're not cutting up the cow, but they're getting served the beef,
chicken, deer, all of it. Yeah,
poultry. For all that stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's fucking interesting as shit, man. And that's what I mean. Is like language developed in this super interesting way, where it's like if you read Old English and stuff, it's very hard once you go back to a certain point to really know what things meant. You know what I mean?
Do you have it? Here's a question for you. Sorry, I don't mean to take you away from yours, but what are then the vestigial remains of music?
That's my point. Is I don't know. It's something to think about. You know what I mean? I mean, your point of this, like everything being built on these like octave and fifth things. It's like because I remember listening to this like mountain Chinese music that was like really, really old, and some ethnomusicologist recorded someone who had a song that was passed down from generation to generation, and this person had very little contact, but it was a lot of like da da. It was like a lot of this like constant interval stuff, and it wasn't like anything too melodic. It was like kind of like dirty fourths and fifths. Yeah, you know what I mean? And so there's something about that, and it's funny because like if you play a didgeridoo, right, to get weird, didgeridoos, they have kind of a passaggio like our voices do, and it's really hard to go high and low and not have this break. I mean, it's like a bugle or anything, and a lot of the resonances of the didgeridoo kind of control like how brass instruments work. If you have a fingering, it's like you can go up and down, but it's going to be fourths or fifths. And so there's something about like a tube length and wavelength that kind of forces you to use these constant intervals. I think it's like an anatomical thing.
Oh yeah, like
and so the vocal tract is of course going to work in the same way. So if you kind of just like go I think it's very natural if you just kind of bump up to the next one. It's going to be something even.
Every
the vocal tract is kind of built like a trumpet, right?
Every single time I'm teaching a student who is kind of tone deaf, I love it. I love it because oftentimes I'll say, "Sing this note." Yeah. And they won't sing the note. Yeah. But I'll be damned if they don't sing a fifth or a fourth.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's always because it's like I don't know enough about the anatomy of the voice to really have that conversation. But to me, I just see a parallel between like trumpets, didgeridoos, and the vocal tract. That if you weren't like, because to sing all the chromatic intervals, even now as professional singers, it's really hard to get those like really fucking clean.
Yeah, but is it here or here? Is it in your head or is it a physical or?
I'm of the opinion that it's a physical thing. It has
really?
It has to do with the acoustics of sound, and that like the voice is naturally going to lock into the overtone series.
But we hear consonances not because okay. Well, in the end, I guess you could say that even your brain is only a series of physical and chemical interactions. Chemical is still physical, right? Yeah. So you could say that everything is physical. But what I mean is that we hear, no, I don't even know what I'm saying. I mean, when we hear a consonance, it is pleasing to us without having to make the consonants ourselves.
No, there's two sides of it, but I think if you punch someone in the stomach, they usually go, ah! Like it's often like there's something natural about like the length of the vocal tract and the sounds that come out. And I think it's the same as the overtone series on a brass instrument, a bugle, like a didgeridoo. It's like it's like to do on a bugle, to do chromaticisms or even small intervals is extremely hard. It's like bending up on a saxophone without changing the key. You know what I mean? It's really hard to find that stuff in between.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, so I don't know. That's pretty much it. You got anything else for the people?
I got nothing for the people.
So we hope you enjoyed it. Like I said,
Didn't we have a fuck fiction we wanted to do?
Fuck it.
Fuck it.
We'll do it next time. So this is actually a secret sponsor podcast, as we said, but because we fucked up the
fucked it up hard.
the main podcast,
Fucked it up
we're gonna release
hard.
this on YouTube. So for our sponsors, you can download the MP3 of this. For everybody else, you're of course free to view it on YouTube.
And if you guys want more of the secret sponsor, so this time you got 2 this week. You got 2 this week. If you want that every week, easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Easy thing to do. It just cost you a little bit of money.
Go on
you
Patreon.
just gotta go to Patreon. Go to buy us a coffee. You guys can support us anytime you want that way. Other ways to support us.
Yeah, of course, Patreon, buy me a coffee, or if you don't want to make the financial commitment, always giving us a. So you're here on YouTube, obviously watching this. Why don't you just give us a follow? You know,
Give us a like, give us a follow, do what you need.
That helps. That helps us, and it costs you nothing. Or go to Facebook, give us a 5-star review. But yeah, otherwise, thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to everybody. If you haven't seen the Future of Music podcast, that one is
still my favorite.
That is the one that's paired with this one. Yeah, that one is really good. Unfortunately, the video didn't work out, but luckily the podcast still exists, so you can only be so upset. This was also a good discussion. So yeah, otherwise, take care, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.